I am now very excited to introduce you to one of my very, very good friends and an incredible human, which is the Margaux Miller, who will be kicking off the next section. And so, if you haven't actually met Margaux Miller before, please just let me introduce you to her because she is an international MC and a TEDx speaker. Here she is in the house. She's one of my international best friends because we met at CMX Summit when she was the MC. And then we have flown to London together. We have been back at CMX Summit, and it has been so much fun just emceeing and speaking and just being friends around the world with Margaux, because she's also been on stages in Brazil, Madrid, Latvia, America, Canada. She was just at Burning Man, which I'm sure we'll have something to talk about later. But we also need to understand that Margaux has had an incredible journey also as a community builder, because she was the director of community and talent learning at TopTal, which is a global freelance network. There was over 20,000 people in that network across 140 countries. Wow. And if you haven't already watched Margaux's TED Talk, which is 6 ways to make better connections online, it has nearly 500,000 views. And please go and connect with Margaux via LinkedIn with the link in the chat shared by Leah, because she's joining us all the way from Winnipeg, Canada right now to talk about designing for connection at online events. Margaux, over
Hi,
to you. How are you?
great job just now. I like that one of your last sentences was that you love orange. I'm like, is that why we became friends? You just really loved my orange hair. Now it's all adding up for me now, Paz.
I mean, I bought an orange wig and I put it on and I just don't look as good as you. So maybe I'll put it
Oh,
on at like in 6 hours time if anyone's
next
still
time we're
here.
on stage together, you can bring it.
Stunning. I love
Yeah,
it. I love it.
yeah.
Well, Margaux, please take us away whenever you're
Thank
ready.
you. Okay, awesome. Thanks so much, Paz. Thanks, everyone. I'm super happy to be here. Hopefully, you come to events like this to get amazing content, but also to make true connections. This is a big thing we talk about, of course, in community. And Paz was just talking about friendship. So drop in the chat for me. Just put the, laptop typing emoji if you're here only to learn, or any kind of learning looking emoji. But give me that emoji and like a hug emoji, or a fun human emoji if you're here to both learn and make new connections with people who are kicking butt in community, in the industry that we all love so much. And I'm asking you this partly because typically we bother to show up at events like these, right? For more than one reason. We want to learn from the organizers, from the people speaking. And sometimes organizers, they do a great job. They set up things like a great lineup of speakers, cool graphics, networking components, and all these different things. But sometimes we go to those events and we still leave thinking that we just didn't connect with anyone in the way that we hoped. And online, that happens even more often, right? Like we go, we get good content. You might click someone's LinkedIn URL in the chat, but you kind of hate that you didn't really make any like actual solid connections. And it feels like, well, that's just online, right? But today I want to talk to you about some of the principles of connection itself, because we can use those to build our events and create opportunities for better interactions and more meaningful connection. And I love like seeing in the chat, clearly most of you have both emojis, right? Because we come to these things, we bother to take time out of our busy days, for more than one of those things in tandem. So um, I do have some slides for you as we go today, but I'm going to tell some stories without slides, some with slides. So first, I just want to acknowledge that this is a really well-run online event, right? We have a bunch of community builders who put together to do it. So you're going to see some of the things I talked about, hopefully in practice, and you can like call them out. But even with just Paz right now, switching over from Beth, right? The two of them, really amazing energy. I felt it from the moment I joined. My intro that I just got was high hype, right? From Paz, and she does a really good job. So again, good examples. But sometimes it feels different, right? And I'll tell you why some of these things happen. First, it happens because we're often invited in, and it's subtle, but it matters. So, for example, how many times have you joined an event where right away you hear something like, we're just going to give it 5 more minutes. We're just waiting for everyone to join. And then we're really excited to have you here. Okay, it doesn't sound too bad, right? Many of you listening have probably used a line like that, especially in the last few years. But without meaning to, what we're doing in that moment is we're shutting down connection before the content even begins. What this does is that sentence like that actually encourages cameras to stay off and silence to occur. Because we're basically saying, like, no one do anything. We're not starting yet. Pause, right? So I'm here today to share some things from a different approach. Events like today, there's music to set the tone, there's visuals to set the tone, there's a lively chat where we're prompting you in the chat. I even just prompted you in the chat, right? The chat now feels a little more human. And we have a host like Paz and Beth just did, who are not just emceeing, but they're actually really trying to be welcoming to us, right? So, I'm going to take you kind of behind the scenes on some of these things today. And I'm not going to talk so much about tools or tech stacks, but really more about the psychology of connection, those really powerful things. Because when we're separated by, time zones and different things that get between us, we have to make people feel seen, feel invited in, like some of those chat things that we'll touch on more, and feel engaged, right? So sometimes with events, we get our teams and we have these meetings all the time, right? Leading up to events, and we focus so much on like the logistics, the run of show, the invites, that we forget that we are not just managing a session, but we're hosting a human experience. Humans are going to interact around when they're watching our run of show and after they get our invite to the event, right? And so this difference between attending and connecting really comes down to how we design these moments intentionally. So let's get to it. Um, I am going to first ask you, do you think we live in a hyper connected world? I'm going to add in some data today because I like making sure that we have data to back up what we're talking about. But give me like a thumbs up or an emoji reaction as I go today to kind of like validate things that jump out at you. These kind of platforms are great because we can have things pop up as well. But here's the landscape that we're looking at right now, basically. There are more ways for us to talk to each other than we've ever had before, right? You can text me even for this event, like we WhatsApped, we emailed, we had a chat backstage, right? There's all these different things. And yet employee engagement globally, like us with all our teams, right, are down to a mere 21%. So only 21% of people are engaged. The rest are disengaged. And disengagement is draining like almost $10 trillion from the world economy every year. And the point of this, I'm telling you, is that it's not just at work. It's in our communities, it's in our membership groups, and it's at our events too. We're in this era where we're more connected than ever. I can literally touch any of you in any way at all times, and yet we're feeling so disconnected. So, how do we deal with that? Well, part of the reason that we're having this is because we have this thing that we call a signal to noise crisis. So, basically, what that means is that we have too many signals coming in, too much noise, and we can't actually process it. So we have like more channels than ever, right? I'm sure a lot of us with our teams, we don't have enough time today for me to like really workshop this with you, but you can just stop and think about it. Like with your team and your community, are you using more than one platform? Slack, Teams, your in-house community platform, email newsletters, event apps that are different from your platform, WhatsApp, a mix of all of it? Actually, there's data showing that since COVID, there's been an increase in channels of up to, I think, like a third. Yeah, the data is saying a third more channels that we're expecting people in our communities and in our teams to use than before. So we have so much choice. That's super exciting, right? We got better tech, but less clarity. And so what this communication issue does is that we have more channels and more touches, but we have less connection and less human touch. So, what do we do about it? Right? Well, here's the secret sauce. Secret sauce is we have to design for connection first because we are in a disconnected world. And to do this, we have to use our human advantage. Community's going to come in here, right? We can do this through a framework that I built that I really love. It's 3 P's to make it easy to remember. It's purpose, personalization, and participation. So help people understand why they're there. Why are they coming to your event? Make them feel seen and included when they are there. And then let them help shape the experience or ensure they at least know clearly how to participate when they get there. And they're not just kind of like sitting and watching and waiting, right? So we're going to get into each of these. It's simple to say, but these 3 Ps are really game changing if you can unlock them. So problem number 1, let's dig into it a little bit more deeply. Have you ever been to an event and thought, why am I really at this event? Right? Like you go and you're kind of excited, and then you get there and you're like, I probably have other things I should be doing. Like, was this what I thought it was? Or even maybe even worse, you get there and you're excited, but you're kind of like, what do I do now? Like maybe there's too many options. It's not clear where you should go or how you should connect with people. You might be feeling disconnected. And the antidote to this problem is that first P, it's purpose. So here's the truth. If people don't know their purpose, they disengage. And this is true for every facet of life. Like, have you ever changed careers or like were between jobs and you felt like you lost your purpose in life, like in your career life? You were feeling like, I don't really know what I'm supposed to do next, where my goals are in life. Like without purpose, people really disengage. And we talk about this a lot too. Paz actually, pretty sure, was the one that recommended a really great book a long time ago to me called Ikigai, about finding kind of your purpose in life and how community is a big part of that. It's looking at the Japanese communities and how they live long, healthy, and really purposeful lives. So side recommendation there. But what happens is when we lack purpose, we often actually blame something else. And it's hard to realize that purpose is at play, but in our events, it's something we really need to plan for. So let me give you some even more evidence here. Maybe you recognize this pyramid. Feel free to throw it in chat if you recognize what this is. It's kind of a cartoony version of it, but you probably learned it in like junior high school. So basically, this year, we used to draw this as Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where belonging and connection and purpose sat at the center of this hierarchy. I'm sure you remember this. Maslow believed that people could not focus on our needs higher up in the pyramid, like self actualization, until we'd mostly obtained the needs in the lower levels. So, this is things like a sense of belonging and love right in the middle there. They came only after like food, water, shelter, and then some safety needs such as like employment and health. But today, there's this new way to look at this pyramid. It's more like a sailboat. So modern research suggests this is a little bit smarter. I have references in the bottom of the screen here, by the way, too, if you want to kind of look up who's talking about this stuff. But the hull of the boat, this is safety, connection, and self-esteem. This has to be all sturdy before we can open the sail of everything else. So if we're missing a plank in that hull, say belonging in our gathering or in our teams, that whole vessel takes on water. So when we plan to run a new event online, before we can even talk about tech or tactics, which we tend to jump to, logistics, right? Stop first and ask, what's our purpose? What rituals or practices can we share that give our people a reason to log in, to turn their cameras on, and to lean in? I know it might sound still a little cheesy. I'm going to give you more P's still in a minute to back this up, but it's literally biology. Evolution has wired us to seek out other humans and a sense of purpose in our communities and in our events. And when we ignore that wiring, that's when we get kind of a lackluster feeling of engagement and connection. So let me give you an event example here. So I was in Amsterdam a little while ago, and there was this great event. It is in person, but there's a way that you can do this virtually, no problem. So let me tell you kind of how it works. But in Amsterdam, they had this pin board with Polaroid style photos, that print out and you can stick it up there, where attendees wrote what kind of connection that they were looking for within 3 buckets at the event. So there was kind of like 3 columns like you see in this picture here. It was mentorship, investment, and partnerships. And then they printed a picture of themselves and they wrote what they needed. And each card was color coded, so it was easy to see like, here are people that I can help because they're looking for this thing I have, or here's people, who might help me. And so why did this work? Well, it worked because there was a declared purpose that created social permission. So I'm going to stop there for a second because it's a really important phrase. Basically, when we clearly declare what we need, in this case, people had this different purpose of what they were looking for, it allows people the social permission to go to them and talk about that thing and open up that conversation and help them in that way. It basically removes that awkward barrier of like, what do I say? Or the uncertainty of what if they don't want that thing? And it invites people in. And most importantly, it aligns people toward a shared intention too, because you're all participating in this activity in the same way, right? So in physical spaces, this purpose is reinforced with things like signage, event pieces, rituals, but online. So online, we have to be deliberate about embedding it into the environment a little bit more because we're working in different spaces, right? So you can do things like open every virtual meeting you have with why this matters. Like always share, this is why we're gathering today. This is what we hope you get from today. Here's how you can participate. And we'll talk about that in the third one today in participation in RPs. But have a great icebreaker at the top of your event always. You know, do live out loud welcomes to your attendees, saying people by name. You know, like we could have gone in the chat. I can see like, hey, Nina, yeah, you're answering. Thanks so much. Jack, oh, definitely you're familiar with it. I love that. Thanks for commenting and letting me know that you're familiar with what I'm talking about. It's really helpful to know I'm on the right track, right? We can say people's names and really invite them in. And for teams too, we can do things like celebrate wins that clearly connect back to our shared values that we know we have. So not just KPIs, not always like bottom line stuff, but even just say within your team you do events like that are typically typically work product based. Maybe you start every Friday offering a virtual coffee that is just about successes or just about fun things and not about tasks or follow up after, right? So the purpose of the event is clear. It's only about the success celebration. It's only about the fun. And we never get into the weeds of like follow-ups and other tasks and other projects, which often derail the purpose of our events and go a different direction. So basically purpose, it doesn't have to be super poetic. It doesn't have to be this beautiful, deep thing every time, but it does have to be shared and clear. So let's keep going here a little bit. This is our solution for this section. The takeaway here mainly, I really do restrict planning with my teams when we're looking at community events. And I stop them before we even start and make sure we remember that purpose is really the fuel. Because when gatherings lose sight of their why, that's when connection starts to erode. And when you do have a clear why, it answers your questions for you. And I can give you so many examples of this. Also, if anyone's read The Art of Gathering, amazing book, you will get a really good crash course on how to do this as well. But when people know why they're here, they show up differently. It gives us this like orientation and intention. And then we can go forward from there. But next up, when we have this purpose, we still do need to figure out how interaction is going to like really feel real when we get there. So the second one is about personalization. So the problem here with the second problem that we're facing is that we're communicating more than ever, right? We have all these mediums and we're putting out more information, but our messages often don't stick, right? So we have these events, we share something, and it's kind of like people are not really paying attention. They're doing other work at the same time, you know, or even just in the world, our messages aren't sticking. And so what we have to do here is watch this like tool and input overload that we just talked about, which can lead to a lack of trust. And think about the fact that people, what they really want, it's not a perfect message, right? There's even things about AI now saying like we should purposely make mistakes in our text so people know that AI didn't write it and that it's actually human. People really want presence. They want availability. They want to know that we're human. And the other kind of piece of this is that what happens is we don't cross this absorption gap. So it's kind of like this space between when a message is sent and when it's actually felt. We really often don't get that nowadays with too much inputs. And part of this is because we're lacking personalization and we have to close that gap. So let's borrow from this likability and trust formula that comes from behavioral science. And what's really fun is that Paz just talked about basically a very similar formula in forming friendships because it's actually not all that different. The good news is that there are researched ways to cross this absorption gap. There are techniques that win people over and that turn their attention into real trust. So we have to dial up these three things. We have to dial up proximity, frequency, and intensity. Now, for events, let me tell you how this translates. Let's start with proximity. Okay. So with proximity, in person, this is the idea that people who sit like physically closer together, let's say like at the office, are more likely to form relationships than those who are further apart. Or you're at an event and you tell people like sit anywhere you want. If they're sitting beside someone all day, they're more likely to connect with that person. In a remote or hybrid environment, right, like a virtual event, we have to replace this with a virtual proximity, which basically is the ease of access that we have to each other. So this is about like the availability and clarity of the channels that we're using. So, you know, we have a chat here today and everyone's in it together. If you keep seeing the same names or you're able to chat with that person easily, it all kind of ties in together. So for events, you want to give people the tools to find their micro communities, right? And I'm sure someone else in this big, long 24-hour thing will talk more about that concept of micro communities, but maybe it's like you group people by interests. You have breakout tracks designed to gather people by shared goals, not just like their job titles, right? You could even do like in person events, you could do VIP lounges that group select people together who have like an immediate understanding of who they want to interact with. Online, I'm going to give you some more examples later, but this could be, breakouts based on themes that people want to be at, or even just like follow ups afterwards where you say what kind of talks that you want to see recordings of. There's all of these things you can do to make sure that their people end up in close proximity of other people with those kind of shared interests that they have. Now, the second piece here that we have to look at is frequency and duration. So basically, this is thinking about like the more often and the longer that you interact with someone, the more familiarity and trust that you build. This is like Paz talking about friendships, right? If I'm around you more and we get deeper, it's more likely that we're going to become better friends. So, this one of frequency, I'm sure we can all think of an example of someone that we see like time and time again, and naturally you just start to trust them more, even if you don't really know a lot about them. And so, you could probably think of like a funny example. Maybe there's somebody at your coffee shop or something, right? But you want to design multiple moments for the same people to reconnect. So, is this like communications in advance of the event, a chat in advance so that people start talking. And then when they see each other during the event, they like recognize the name and then they go to, a personal platform afterwards. Is it, welcome mixers? Is it coffee corners? Is it recurring chat threads? It's really not so much about like just mass quantity, but it's about intentional overlap where the same people can find each other if they want to. Finally, intensity in this formula is kind of like the multiplier here. So this is the depth and meaning of our interactions. This is like personal anecdotes or a shared challenge. This is why, challenges or like little competitions help people bond. Think about, have you ever been in a virtual event where you had to go into a breakout room and do like a scavenger hunt in your house or something? These are really fun. I've done one with Slack before. If you're here, anybody calling you out, it was fun. But you go and you're in this like breakout room and you run around your house and you get different items for this scavenger hunt, and then you bring them all back and then you join the bigger group. Well, those people that you were in that like intense, smaller competition challenge with on your team are the ones you're going to remember more, right? It's also things like moments of vulnerability. Is there a space where we're actually like sharing or building a relationship that's like memorable and valuable? So you might have already been aware of this concept and how you bond through like challenging situations or overcoming something together. But basically, we want to try and design moments that people will remember that are like this. So maybe it's a roundtable where people tell personal stories, or it's a speaker where you do a meet and greet, but it's less about selfies and more about like getting your actual questions answered. Or it's even bringing in like a surprise speaker because there's shock and awe and people will remember that afterwards, right? So the formula really boils down to this: the stronger your connection with someone, the more likely they're going to trust you and advocate for you and want to come back again. So help people make strong connections at your event, and they'll really appreciate you greatly for it. Now, the solution here overall, this second P, is to focus on the people. People don't need perfectly tailored messages, but they do need to feel seen. And the moment that we show up with even a little bit of presence, emotion, or the opportunity for connection starts to take root, we now have this purpose, we now have this personalization, and our events are starting to make people feel seen. But alas, there's still another P, right? So to truly belong, people need to feel involved and participate. And that brings us to the final and most powerful principle, which is participation. Because here's the biggest myth in connection, right? It's that, well, people are showing up. Look, we have hundreds of people here. You tell your boss, like, we had bums in seats. It was awesome. But just because people attend doesn't mean they feel included. Just because they attend doesn't mean they have a feeling of belonging. Because you can get people to log in and show up, but it doesn't mean they feel part of something. And we can, however, design for belonging through shared experience. So let me give you a simple online example that I've seen work well. Well, I say simple, it's a little bit to organize, but it is an online example. There's this idea called a breakout carousel. Basically, your attendees, they sign up for a themed track that, and there's so many different events that we do out there, right? But with this one, it's like a bigger event in this concept. Sign up for a themed track that is like a small group circuit. So you pick out a certain topic like AI community or advocacy groups or something like that. And over the course of 20 minutes, you move through 3 short, focused breakout rooms. Each room has only one facilitator and one speaker. That person has like 3 minutes to pitch or introduce their concept or their idea, and then 2 minutes of audience Q&A or chat engagement. And you stay with those same people. So if you're this AI group that wants to do like only AI and community, you go to like 3 or 4 different rooms in that time with the same group of people, always in these rapid fire things. It's intense. You're asking questions. So bringing up some of those things we just talked about with intensity and depth, right? And you're never in a room for too long. There's no pressure to like unmute if you don't want to because things are moving fast, but you get real value. You hear new voices and you start to feel who you want to follow up with later. And now this works for a few reasons, but it's kind of like an exciting concept, right? We have this ability to meet people that maybe we aren't like used to, but basically the big things here are, first, people get value without awkward small talk, right? Like we're going right to the value. These booths or speakers or whatever you want to, like however you want to group them, they get equal exposure. So they're happy too. And then everyone in the group bonds because there's this shared curiosity. Like they've picked that theme for a reason. They've walked through it together, which gives them that shared experience. And you could do this in person. And you can use the example that you're seeing here, like DJ vibes, and you put like headphones on and you walk around to these different groups. And then you also look silly. And so there's vulnerability together. So there's ways we can do this in person and online, but there's structure to it with fun at the same time. And most importantly, it's inviting you to participate without pressure because there's movement. There's all these exciting things. Now, I'm moving to this slide, which is like, you could do an hour presentation on just this slide alone. So in a minute, I'm going to add in kind of the different text that kind of appears to be missing here right now. And feel free to take a screenshot. We can talk about this more after. So can, many people that are on the call today. CMX has a version of this. It's a little bit different. But basically every thriving community, whether you're running a Slack group or you're running a 3-day virtual summit, it all essentially runs on this same loop when it comes to like the psychology of connection, the community principles that are at the base. And when it's done well, it keeps people coming back, contributing, and connecting. So I want to quickly go through this and then we're almost out of time here. But basically at the top, it's your identity, your shared values. I'm going to go over these quickly to get to that bottom one of participation because that's our P we're talking about. Basically, this is your clear why, right? Work on your purpose, get this one done. Next, you want to make sure you're building trust. Trust comes from 2-way communication. If your attendees only ever listen and they never speak back, it's not a relationship, right? It's a broadcast and trust doesn't really form in the same way. Next, you want to get to that participation bucket. This is the key one. This is the idea of having a shared experience, right? So this is where belonging really starts. This is like that guided tour with themed tracks. This is the connection wall with the Polaroids that you take or a virtual version of that. It's interactive sessions that require participation. It's even like, feedback prompts to tell people that their input matters. Shared experiences are really the key when people have trust and are part of that clear identity. Everything is really required there for us to kind of have that full picture and come around to the final piece, which is this cycle, right, of recognition or rewards. And these don't need to be monetary. This can be just like having people make sure they feel seen, letting them know their contribution matters. It can be like a thumbs up on the spot. It could be, giving you asked the best question of the day sticker, or the best question per session sticker or something, or just you asked a question and now you get a badge on your name, right? That you can use virtually or in person. It works the same. There's all these little things that we can do to make sure this loop keeps carrying around. And when you design for it, when you don't just run an event, but you create a temporary community in that space at that event that people want to be a part of, they feel part of that identity, the trust grows, they want to participate, and you reward them for doing so, and it keeps going around. So again, we could spend a whole 60 minutes on this slide. Feel free to take a quick screenshot, but it is a really exciting concept to talk about. Basically, in the end here, when people feel like contributors and not just consumers, everything changes. It's not about turning every event into an unconference either when I'm talking about them being part of it and participating. But it is like small, smart shifts that get people to be more than just an audience member into some kind of contributor. Next time you run an event, stop and go, is our group just watching the whole time? Or are they contributing in some way? And if there's not a clear way or many ways that they get to contribute, start over, build again, find ways they can connect and that they can remember those connections that they make. Because belonging really doesn't happen by accident, it happens by design. So these are the three things that I'll leave you with. We don't need more content, but we don't need fancier tools. What we need, especially in our events, is more care. It's that purpose, personalization, and ways to participate. Because when you care about how someone feels, the moment they walk into a room, even if that's virtual, that's when the connection starts. We've all been to events that fell flat. We've all hosted something and thought, I don't think that connected the way I hoped. But use these 3 Ps going forward. I know that this human advantage, outside of our community world might feel soft, but everyone here, I think it is strategic. I hope you all keep building gatherings that people don't just want to attend, but where they feel like they belong, where they walk away, not just with content, but with a sense of community and connection. This meaningful interaction is how we get people to really feel the power of community and connection. And we have the power to design for that. So that's it, the human advantage. Please use it. I hope you do. I've got some QR codes here. You can find me or tell me what you thought about my presentation. But I know they drop all this stuff in chat too, because Paz and these guys run a tight ship.
Yes, we do. And please, everyone, post your favorite emoji and takeaway from Margaux's session. Wow, the crowd goes wild. Yay! Margaux, thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom. I love the 3 Ps that stand for Paz, and more Paz. It was
Right,
just
Paz.
so solidifying.
Yeah.
But no, one of the best things that you said that really got me thinking is to create connection at online events. It's not just the event itself. We have all this time before, right? Something that we do is we create WhatsApp group chats before we all go to these major conferences. I mean, APAC speakers for Looper, we're all in this WhatsApp group chat chatting right now before this event, which is super meta. So that was my key takeaway.